Martin Luther King. He's assassinated by James Earl Ray. Again, not an assassin. Small-time, pathetic criminal who, for example, tried to do a robbery and shot himself. He was doing another robbery and he fell out of his own car. This is not a master criminal by any stretch of the imagination. All of the police that were assigned to protect Martin Luther King, because he was in Memphis, he's in the Deep South in the 60s, he's a civil rights leader. This is not, the best place for him to be. But the day before he was killed, all the police pulled back, they call it. They moved away, they left him basically. And he walked out, and they also changed his room to a much more vulnerable spot. And then he walked out. James Earl Ray didn't know him at all, shot him and killed him. And then got his gun and some other incriminating evidence with his fingerprints all over it and all that, and put all this stuff in a bag and ran out the door, his front door of the boarding house where he was staying, and dropped the bag in the doorway. Just a bag of evidence pointing directly to him. And then he jumped in a car and drove away seconds before the police arrived. Now you might think, why didn't he just jump in the car with the bag and drive away with the evidence and not leave the evidence behind? Good question. But that's what he chose to do, apparently. He chose to escape, but leave plenty of evidence pointing directly to him because he had a criminal record. So his fingerprints were on file and they just identified him immediately. But he was somehow, even though he had no money, he was able to travel all over the place. The guy was in Canada, he was in Mexico, various different identities, passports, driving licenses. And this is supposed to be just one low intellect person who was able to obtain all these different IDs, real high quality fake passports and all that. And he was eventually arrested after having facial reconstructive surgery in the 60s. This man had no money. He was eventually arrested in London. And he was trying to get a flight, I think, to Belgium. But he was arrested in London anyway. And there was no way that he could have paid for any of this. And if you look into the other cases as well, especially Lee Harvey Oswald and the way he travelled around the world, a similar story. No way he could have paid for that. So he gets arrested in London and goes to prison. Unfortunately for the storytellers, in a trial a few years later, it was proven that the gun that was apparently used to kill Martin Luther King, that was left in the bag by him, was not the murder weapon. That was proven in court by experts. In a court of law, it was proven and demonstrated that's not the gun that killed him. So that has no evidentiary value at all. And another man who was completely disconnected from James Earl Ray was convicted of the crime in the 70s. He was convicted of killing Martin Luther King. And it was concluded in the case that he was probably working with members of the government, probably CIA. That is an official court conclusion of a jury after viewing the evidence. Right. So you would imagine that James Earl Ray would get a new trial and would probably be released from prison. Never happened. He died in prison. Again, many problems with that. Robert.